Professor Ergil, thank you so very much for joining our interview series. Let me start right away with the first question. How would you characterize the evolution of Turkish populism and authoritarianism under AKP's and Erdoğan's rule, and how has it redefined the boundary between the people and the political elite? In what ways has the ruling AKP's populist discourse transformed into a vehicle for authoritarian consolidation rather than democratic inclusion?
Okay, now, the nature of the political regime in Turkey has always been populist. You know, the founding party of the Republic is called the Republican People's Party, and one of the 6 principles of the regime has been populism anyway. I mean, it's written down, populism. Rather than being popular, it is populist because the ruling elite wanted to execute a revolution from above, and they found the people not ready for a revolution to join the modern society or the modern world. Hence, to transform a backward society, they took the initiative of a revolution from above, an elitist revolution, and changed the fabric of the society accordingly. So the populist nature of the regime has always been there, ingrained in it. It's in the DNA of it. But now, with the incumbent AKP party, it has become rather diluted. It's no more secular, and it's less oriented to the world, and it's expressed as localism and nationalism, because in classical populism, you know, there is the good people and the representatives of the good people against an evil, inefficient, and rather alien elite that forcefully wants to change the society, its culture, its identity, and so forth. But, you know, this localization and nationalization, rather than westernization and modernization, which was the true assets of the Republican regime on its outset, has made the Turkish society and the present regime a rather local and non-elitist and rather parochial society. Parochial meaning more peasant-like, more Eastern, more Middle Eastern, if you like, and more religious rather than secular, modern, and world-oriented.
Right. Can Turkey's current political crisis be interpreted as a case study in populism transitioning into autocracy? If so, what distinguishes the Turkish model from its global counterparts?
Well, of course, I mean, the Turkish regime is not only popular, but populist, but increasingly authoritarian. The reason being is that the incumbent party has made a distinction between the state and the society, and merged the government with the state apparatus. So if the distinction between the state and the government is blurred, then authority, the central authority, becomes more solid, less differentiated, and division of power diminishes. As power becomes more central and more autocratic, in the Turkish case, it has become more personalized. And the personification of the government can be identified with the present president, Mr. Erdoğan. So all powers accrue in his hands, and he can exercise anything on all assets of life and all institutions of the government, including the judiciary. And the judiciary is now used as an extension of politics and control of society. And thus, Turkish populism has not only become more populistic, but more authoritarian and autocratic. In this sense, well, there are similar regimes in the world, but the Turkish one has become too personalized, anchoring all powers possible, political, judicial, legislative, military, and so forth, in the hands of one person. So the party that brought that one man into power has diminished. It's no more visible. So what you have is the instruments of power of the state in the hands of one man and the rest of the society. And that rest of the society is split into two: the supporters of the incumbent government and its leadership, and those that oppose. The crisis, the ongoing crisis, is that opposition is growing now, and the line between persuasion and coercion has diminished. Persuasion, which was the great success of the AKP, it has evaporated, and now more coercion, and the instruments of coercion is proliferated, including the judiciary as well.
All right. How has political Islamism evolved under Erdoğan from a reformist agenda in the early 2000s to a more illiberal and authoritarian governance model today? Is the AKP's version of political Islamism now functioning primarily as a tool for ideological legitimation, or does it still contain genuine theological, political, or societal aims?
Before AKP, the ideologies, the current ideologies that sought a place for themselves in Turkish politics have been partitioned. There was the socialists, and maybe a little bit further away from the socialists, communists, which was a small minority, the socialists, social democrats, liberals, conservatives, and so on, nationalists, of course, nationalists. Each ideology was represented by a political party with a background, with a historical background. So when AKP emerged and started taking stage in Turkish politics, it has to rely on something. So it relied more on religion. Religion was a supportive mechanism for nationalism and populism. So religion in itself was used as an instrument not to build a regime on it, but to support a populist nationalist an authoritarian regime, and it could be effective so far, but it has lost its fervor and effectiveness because religion is associated in Turkey with honesty, with integrity, and with efficiency. You know, all these other parties with different ideologies has not made Turkey as great as people expected. So the Islamic parlance rhetoric said that, look, even the name of the party is Ak, meaning pure, white. So, you know, they represented themselves as honest, as non-corrupt, and also more popular. I mean, closer to the people. So, in that sense, more empathetic with the people, more intertwined with its necessities and so forth. And as time passed, and AK Party showed that or exposed its weaknesses, and that being religious doesn't mean to be honest. Being in control of everything, ending a tutelary system in the center of which was the military, as you know, doesn't mean that democracy would take root and there will be a more efficient society, less corrupt, more honest, more responsive to the people. So as AK Party lost its credibility, the Islamic rhetoric also became dysfunctional. This is what has happened in Turkey. And because of that, this 23-year rule of AK Party has come to a halt with these apparent street demonstrations and so forth, with protests, showing that the party and its leadership cannot deliver anymore. It cannot keep its promises, and it cannot do that any further. So, I mean, it has come to a halt.
Right. To what extent has political Islamism been radicalized under the pressures of regime survival and repression of opposition groups like Kurds, Alawites, Gülen followers, and political figures like Selahattin Demirtas, and most recently Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu?
Well, Islam could not be radicalized because, you know, the entrenched institutions and the majority of the believers believe in the general assets of the republic. You know, Turkey has been, I mean, the founding fathers have been criticized by adopting Swiss civic code, for example. But they have enjoyed all the benefits brought with it, you know, because there's no discrimination in that code. Women are much freer. Men can act freer in their daily dealings and so forth. Although that code has been criticized as being alien, people have benefited from it for how many, so many years, for so many decades. In that sense, people are not opposed to the Republican regime and its laws, its values, and so forth. People are expecting those to be furthered, to be reinforced, and new advantages, new developments must be integrated into the society rather than taking the society backward to another century where Islam dominated with its Sharia law. You know, in Turkey, that never happened. Only a minority wanted Sharia law because they believe that the system is not just. But Sharia law doesn't make a society more just, you know, more egalitarian. People understand that. In that sense, Islamism in Turkey has been a supportive value system for a insufficient political system, which could be improved rather than bring a abrupt halt to it and taking the society back to another century.
Right. To what extent has Erdogan's populism depended on construction of internal enemies, such as the Kurds, followers of the Gülen movement, and İmamoğlu, to sustain a polarizing narrative and consolidate power?
Well, I mean, it didn't start with Erdogan. You know, populism is built on dichotomies, as you know, dichotomies and contradictions. You know, there is a good society and a bad elite, or good people rather than bad politicians. These dichotomies and contradictions help to consolidate the supporters of the government, the regime, or whatever, or the nation as the founder of the system. Has been there, unfortunately, these contradictions. And of course, inbuilt conflicts has been there since the onset of the Republic, you know, because the nation, the definition of the nation, has not been a large one, including all the citizens of the society, but rather is based on an ethnic identity, mainly Turkishness, and of course, automatically excludes others, if not legally, but emotionally, and then in practice, of course, or politically. Hence, Erdogan did not change this. Although Erdogan and his party was non-nationalistic in the beginning, because Islamism transcends nationalism, as you know, ethnic boundaries. So, I mean, you can have a body of believers coming from different ethnic backgrounds and different nationalities. But seeing that the bulk of the people are nationalistic, and the founding ideology of this country is nationalism, AK Party and Erdogan adopted nationalism and supported its Islamic leanings with the rhetoric of religion or Islam, but mainly became nationalistic. And nationalism always needs an enemy or more than one, always. So when you define us with certain qualities and deny those qualities to the others who are enemies, then you create a conflictual atmosphere where your kind, your supporters are closely knit, but the others are more than opponents, but become enemies. So Turkish politics has become, rather than competitive, it has become warlike.
All right. What does İmamoğlu's arrest signify in terms of the erosion of rule of law and judicial independence in Turkey?
Well, the rule of law has been lost for a long time. I mean, we cannot find it anywhere here. So it has been hiding somewhere. It has been kept under chains, I think, or kept somewhere. But it may come out if the incumbent government and its leadership sees no other way than returning back to rule of law and to democracy. Today, they still believe that they can win elections, and all this latest ado due to imprisonments, cracking on opposition, imprisonment of anyone who criticizes the government and its leadership, is due to the fact that they are losing hope of winning the next elections. So they are clearing the way. First of all, removing the supposedly successful competitors first, and then the rules of engagement, that is, democratic rules and so forth. But here there is a contradiction. That's a very substantial, significant contradiction. That is, if you demonize, criminalize, and prosecute your opponents and attack to the very institutions that brought you to power, so you start delegitimizing the system and including yourself, that has used this avenue to come to power. So Turkey is now living in this unfortunate pinhole because the delegitimization of the system via the legitimization of the opposition is taking place.
Right. How do you interpret the strategic use of judiciary to disqualify or imprison political opponents within Turkey's broader trajectory from competitive authoritarianism toward full autocracy?
It's so obvious. I mean, if you move from competitive authoritarianism to brute authoritarianism, of course, the judiciary is either dismissed or become a tool of politics. So, I mean, that's inevitable. This occurs everywhere in the world where the government or the regime becomes more authoritarian. So this is almost inevitable. This is a choice, and this government and its leadership has chosen the path to autocratization and to authoritarianism.
Right. Do you see parallels between the Erdoğan's regime's control of institutions and historical patterns of soft coup in Turkish political history, or is this an unprecedented form of civil authoritarianism?
What was the last sentence?
Or do you think this is an unprecedented form of civil authoritarianism?
No, it's not unprecedented. I mean, this is all over the world. I mean, the same patterns are visible all over the world. We see it in Russia, we see it in Belarus, we see it in Latin America, in Hungary, and so forth. In that sense, there is nothing strange. The thing is, why people put up with such a deterioration of the regime? That's important. And I believe that if there is corruption, there is also a consent by at least a part of the society becoming a silent, how would I say, a silent partner in that corruption. In that sense, the people also, I think, need a more an education in democracy as well, rather than giving in to an authoritarian regime in return for favors, in return for advantages, in return for privileges, rather than rights and freedoms and equality, then a society, unfortunately, deserves the bad administration that it supports, at least for some time.
Right. How do the ongoing mass protests compare to the Gezi Park movement in terms of scope, motivation, and political potential?
Well, in the Gezi Park demonstrations, or how would I say, the Gezi Park phenomenon, because it was so colorful, so unexpected, and so how would I say, detached from this political party, that political party, from social classes and so forth, and political agendas. It was a wonderful kaleidoscope movement, I would say. It has no organization. It had no organization. It had no leadership, and it had no ideology. When I say ideology, I mean if not totally defined, neatly defined, at least a trajectory for action and the aftermath of that action. What will happen later? I mean, how will we proceed to do what? And what we will do after the movement? You know, that's a broad definition of the ideology. In that sense, Gezi didn't have this. But this time, although people that erupted in the streets, you know, unexpectedly, inadvertently, these people found CHP, the Republican People's Party, there already protesting and already a victim of the oppression and the crackdown. So this wave, popular wave, pushed the Republican Party forward and making it the leader of the moment now. And the CHP, or the Republican Party, lived to that expectation. So far, it has successfully led the opposition. And although we do not know where it can take, to what extent it can lead the movement, and what the outcome will be, so far, in leadership and organizational aspects, that condition has been met. Now, what will happen? I mean, how the regime will be transformed and into what is still unknown, but it's so obvious that corruption has to end, oppression has to end, democratic institutions have to be restored, and Turkey has to be more aligned with the world. I mean, in that sense, there's no need for a neat ideology or ideological agenda. I mean, if these can be met, the outcome of these protests can yield a very productive outcome.
Right. With İmamoğlu's sidelined, what implications does this have for the legitimacy of the upcoming local and general elections?
Well, we do not know what will happen, whether the crackdown of the government will continue, and what the response of the people will be. I mean, whether protests will grow and the pressure built on the government will lead it to change its authoritarian stance, or the crackdown will grow and we will become a absolute authoritarian regime or not. And whether the system can endure this much pressure. I mean, the economy, which is at the brink of collapse, may collapse totally, and conflicts can grow into outright frictions in the streets or elsewhere. It's hard to say. It depends on the evolution of the events, I think, and the response of the opposing factions in the process.
And lastly, Professor Ergil, how do you think the second Trump administration has been affecting Erdoğan and his system?
Well, it has been rather surprising that the US government, not only Mr. Trump and his entourage, but in general, the American civic society, and for that matter, the European Union and European governments have been rather quiet on the authoritarian ascent of the Turkish government. All these parties, American and European actors, are expecting things from Turkey. Europe wants to keep all those millions of refugees and migrants and so forth in Turkey, so that Turkey would not open the gates of the dam and let the flood into Europe. Europe is very apprehensive on that stance. Secondly, they don't want the radicalism that's simmering in the Middle East to reflect on Europe, and they see Turkey as a barrier to it. And thirdly, now with Russia, after a possible peace deal with Ukraine, will be a threat against the security of Europe. And with the US abandoning Europe and making its security rather liable, Europe needs Turkey as a military power, as cheap soldiers, and do not want to antagonize the Turkish government because of this. And as for the US government, as long as Turkey does not threaten the security and interests of Israel, which it doesn't, Turkey is a good friend of the White House. Secondly, Syria has to be stabilized, and Turkey can be, as a neighboring country and as a factor that's present in the Syrian political stage, can contribute to the stabilization of Syria. How? By supporting the transitional government in Damascus, and also reconciling the Kurds and others with the incumbent transitional government in Syria. Thirdly, the US wants Turkey to be in the anti-Iranian axis together with its other allies, at the top of which is Israel. And all these combined the U.S. sees Turkey, I mean, the U.S. meaning the Trump administration, sees Turkey as a rather advantageous ally in this volatile region, and could serve the purposes of the American foreign policy.
Professor Ergil, thank you so very much for your time. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.